Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Chris Hobson, the CEO of Rare Beauty Brands, which acquires and incubates high-potential indie beauty brands in a really unique hybrid accelerator model that I'm not sure I totally understand yet, which is why you're here, Chris. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I guess maybe I'll just start out with that. What is the Rare business model? And, are you more of an accelerator, an incubator, kind of a roll-up guy? My favorite thing to do. What's your business model at this point?
So I think of us as really a roll up with an incubator on the side. And so really we started out with Patchology as our main brand, and we scaled Patchology, and that was doing really, really well. And along the way, I realized that we have all this great distribution and a really strong team and a really strong back office. And I said, what would be really cool is if we could have more brands on top of that platform that we've built. So we did our first acquisition in 2019, acquired a little brand out of Brooklyn, New York called Plant Apothecary, brought it in, and we've been scaling that brand. And along the way, we also get feedback from retailers, and people come to us with ideas, and we have really good creative people in-house. So we're able to not only acquire brands, but also just sort of invent them out of whole cloth ourselves.
I love that. Lots to talk about there. The Patchology, you started that way back in 2014. Seems ancient, but I guess it's not that long ago.
No, I'm dating myself.
What it is. Yeah, exactly. Well, that wasn't your first rodeo. How did that come about? And then did you just wake up one day and say, hey, this isn't enough. I want to start doing some roll-ups and responding to this market that's emerging, or what happened there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started my career at Procter and Gamble as a brand manager and learned the P&G way to run a business. And then I, left and right around 1999, and that was when tech and .com was going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I did an MBA, and then spent about 10 years in tech. And when I found the precursor to Rare Beauty Brands, what became Patchology, it was a neat little company down in Providence, Rhode Island, that was making transdermal patches for drug companies. So,
companies like a med tech play, really.
Yeah, exactly. And companies would come to us and say, we want a better nicotine patch. And we would go into our lab and create a better nicotine patch, and then they would take it to market. And I approached them and they approached me, and we sort of said, hey, we've got an opportunity here to take the intellectual property of the patch business and turn it into a consumer product. And so, yeah. And so, because people really resonated with the insight that patches have been around for decades, patches are proven to deliver ingredients deep into the skin, and nobody was really taking advantage of that technology to deliver all the great actives in skincare deep into the skin, which is where they need to go in order to sort of do their thing. So yeah, we launched Patchology in 2014. We took the traditional model, which was then, start at Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus, sort of the top of the department store market.
Top of the heap there.
Yeah, and we did, and went to Nordstrom and Saks, and then Blue Mercury and Ulta, and now we've expanded globally to Mecca in Australia, and Space NK, and Harrods and Selfridges in the UK, and Sephora in Europe, and really all over the world. And along the way, I at one point I realized, we've built this great distribution platform. We've got an amazing team that we're working with here. We've built out a very robust back office. Let's create a mini P&G. Let's go back to my P&G roots, where you've got multiple brands under one holding company. And at the same time, the whole indie beauty revolution was happening. And I just saw a huge opportunity to blend from a management perspective, to blend the best of P&G database decision-making, really disciplined brand management, together with entrepreneurial, agile approach to, building brands in an iterative, entrepreneurial kind of way. So that's what we're doing.
Quite an evolution. So lots to question there. However, I think I just figured out the answer to my question, which is, what's your business model? Not incubator, not accelerator, not really roll up. You're really like a venture studio, one of the go-to buzzwords right now. That and SPACs, those are the main two things that are happening.
Yeah, I
So
feel like I'm mainly
similar
talking
to a
about
venture studio.
back.
Venture studios don't always take full ownership, but you're clearly, owning. Can any Are you interested in like other brands coming in and just being part of your incubator accelerator? Maybe like we do at 1871. Where you might take a piece of it or something, or does it have to be wholly owned once you lock and load with them?
Yeah, I think the order of the day is to be flexible. I
Mm.
think one of the things I haven't quite figured out yet is, if a brand wants to come in and take advantage of the back office and take advantage of the distribution relationships we have, how do we devote enough of our time and resources to that if we're not in a majority ownership position? And that
Yeah.
I haven't quite figured out. So I'm
Very, very
still
different model, right?
yeah.
If I was you, I'd be favoring what I own the most of to make sure they're successful because technically they'd be competing. There's a big group in the UK that does that. They're a kind of a beauty accelerator that we've had on that does
Mhm.
it's called Founders Lab, I think it is,
Or
and
factory maybe.
Founders Factory. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
much better. Yeah, I've always envisioned, having all of those companies together. They're kind of competing with each other. So it's like I'm always curious how far the collegial attitude goes there. So then you also, so how did you? So what's Plant, your other company that you picked up? So the
Yeah, so great little brand. I saw it in a store. I was walking through, and it had this really distinctive sort of Bauhaus design, but it was really natural skincare and personal care products. And I just fell in love with the look and feel of it. And I bought it and I used it, and they had a body wash that I fell in love with, and was using it. And I was surprised a couple of years later when an investment banker called me and said, "Hey, I heard that Rare Beauty Brands is acquiring brands. This brand, is looking for an exit and looking for the ability to have those added resources to scale." And we did the deal fairly quickly, and we've been super excited about it. As I said, it's a great little brand. It's got lots of good bones to it, and we've been able to take it and plug it into our distribution system and give it the discipline back office and the resources that it needs. It turns out like having a balance sheet and having money for inventory and all of those things is really important.
yeah.
And so we've been able to add that, and the brand is growing again. It's great.
Yeah, you brought all that lean back office expertise, the brand strategy and development, especially channel development, the kind of global sales force. I assume you've
Yeah,
got calling on every retailer on the planet. So
yeah.
that's attractive. So what's your pipeline look like? We're not under NDA here, but give us a sense of where's this going over the
I
next,
mean,
three,
there
five
are
years.
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of brands out there, right? I mean, we've seen the rise of the indie brands not only in beauty but in food and in pet and really in all these
Health,
spaces.
beauty, wellness, you name it. And many
Right.
of them are converging and merging, and we've had many of them on the program just because it's so popular the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're certainly witnessing the growth of these indie brands. And I think that what happens with indie brands is over time you get to a point where you realize I'm either going to need to raise venture money or private equity money and build out a whole team and do all of that, which means dilution for the founder and it means risk for the founder and bringing on new partners and how's this all going to work and what's going to be my path forward.
Right.
Um, and some founders just sort of say, hey, probably better for me to take a step back and bring in, sell the majority of the company and bring in professional management to help me scale. And that's really what we do. The perfect scenario for us is founder wants to be all about product and the mission and the story of the brand,
Right.
and telling the story to the world, but then they don't want to handle finance and accounting and inventory and demand planning and sales and making sure that you've got the right people showing up at the stores to do freelance work and all of that stuff
They
that
hate that part.
yeah,
Exactly.
exactly, all that the hard work that it really takes to build a brand. And I took a bet that there were people out there that were in that stage that were ready to do that, and so far so good. I mean, I probably have 3 to 5 conversations a week with beauty brand founders that are
Yep.
looking at this. And it doesn't always work out for a variety of reasons, but we've got a very good pipeline of brands, and one specifically I can't talk about obviously, but we're working on right now that would really jump us up, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's great timing, great opportunity. I could think of a handful right now that I should give your cell phone number to. However, what I've been seeing just as part of Monetary Partners, we're investing in NextGen food companies. The valuations for health, beauty, wellness, food, just that whole um, ball of wax they're almost like tech valuations now. They're
Yeah.
very high. What are you running into that with the smaller ones, or are they a little bit more
Yeah,
realistic?
I mentioned sometimes it doesn't work out. A lot of the times it doesn't work out because a brand that's doing 1, 2, 3 million in sales think that they should be valued at the same multiple as a $100 million brand that's kicking off 35 million of EBITDA. And there's value to scale and there's value to profitability that doesn't necessarily accrue to a $1 or $2 million brand.
Right.
And so we certainly see unrealistic valuation expectations out there. To be fair, like when I was 1 or 2 million in sales, I probably wanted that valuation too, right? So I get it, and I respect it, and I respect the entrepreneur who wants to take his or her vision to the next level before they think about exiting. So
Yeah.
we see those valuations out there. It really has to be just like a marriage. It really has to be a fit on both sides, right? So we wait till we find the brands that are really really good, really really passionate founders, but have realistic valuation expectations.
Yeah, interesting. And there's all kinds of cultural questions here because sometimes you're bringing these companies together, other times you're still letting them run independently. Do you have a formula there, or is it going to depend on your third and your fourth one?
Yeah, probably more depend, but I think that one thing that COVID has taught us is that virtual works. Working from home works.
Yeah, of
You get
course.
the structure right, and you get the incentives right, and the management systems which we've now gotten right. It really works, and so my job is to convince people that they're building something meaningful and they're coming to work on a mission driven company that's very valuable, and people they're motivated by that, and the same holds true for brands that we acquire. We have a head office. I'm sitting in it right now, but we don't have a ton of people here. We let people work from wherever they work from, and the same thing holds true for brands that we acquire. It's sort of if you've got a an operation in Poughkeepsie or Topeka, and that works for you, great. We can be virtual, and we'll take the products and we'll take the brand and we'll scale it globally, but we don't need you to be here in Boston where we are.
No, of course not. That's an old model. I remember when the VCs used to demand that the founders move to Silicon Valley, and quite frankly, Microsoft for decades when they were acquiring companies. I actually passed on a deal with them once, selling one of the companies I was CEO of because they wanted everyone to move to Seattle. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, the
Yeah.
um, the reason I ask that question is twofold. One is a lot of this back office stuff in this industry is science. It's coming up with these new formulas and coming up with things. You're not just whipping it off to a contract manufacturer. So I assume like Plant probably had some pretty interesting back office science stuff going on. Maybe the new one that you're looking at will as well. And there seems to be economies of scale there where you eventually end up with this kind of back office lab kind of thing versus I get all the shared services stuff you do, but the secret sauce is really in the what you guys are making and how you market and position it and brand it and keep the founder edge in there is to me a little separate. So how do you rationalize that as you acquire 3, 4, 5, 6 companies? Let's say you're back on a year, 2 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the chemistry part of it that you allude to, the product
Yeah,
development part of it, is ripe for centralization, right? I
yeah,
mean,
I think
having
so.
having a team of people that is on the leading edge, monitoring what ingredients are hot, monitoring what ingredients really work, blending those together, innovative formulas. I mean, there are a lot of contract formulation labs out there, but having that expertise in house. Typically, the typical indie brand doesn't have the
Mhm.
the capability and the expertise to invest in that. You got to have a lab, and you got to have hoods, and you got to have mixers, and you got to have a bunch of stuff, and you got to employ people. And so as we grow our capabilities, we expect that our capabilities in that area will grow as well. I mean, it's ripe for expertise that you look at Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, and where I used to work at Procter and Gamble. I mean, at P&G, we employed more scientists, more PhDs than Harvard, Stanford, and MIT combined,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that's certainly the vision for Rare Beauty Brands, is as we grow, our capabilities in that regard will grow as well.
That's good. That was my guess. It'd be a smart move. And as an alternative, some of these beauty brands, are looking at, being acquired by a Unilever versus you. The evaluations might be different. They might not be, but seems like you might be a more friendly or entrepreneurial place to go. But that was part of that question too. Is like, what happens to the culture? You start rolling up all these companies. Some of the CEOs have some type of earnout. I assume you want to keep that connective tissue there for a while.
Yep. Yep. It's funny. I mean, you mentioned Microsoft doing acquisitions and forcing everybody to move to Seattle, right?
Yeah, I was dating myself, but yeah, that was
Yeah, yeah,
that
no,
was that was a rule.
yeah, and actually P&G, when I was there, when they would do acquisitions, I mean,
Yeah,
Gillette was a huge acquisition, so most of it stayed in Boston. But really, the default was absorbing everything into the board, right?
right.
And what I've seen, even the big companies, P&G, Unilever, I mean, even here in Boston, P&G bought First Aid Beauty, and it
Yep.
seems to be running as its own little unit, and they're not trying to necessarily change the culture. Unilever bought Living Proof, same thing. It's still here in Boston, and it's still doing its thing. Our approach is very similar to that. I mean, we can bring the company in, and we want to prize their unique culture. We want them to keep their unique culture because that's what presumably has gotten them to a certain level of success. So
Yeah.
we definitely want to do that.
Yeah, I guess a comparable might be different size and scope, of course, as we had the CEO of Dermalogica owned by Unilever, and they have kept that culture intact. It's a B2B, more sales channel, of course. It's very different from the consumer
Yeah.
push, but the two founders, husband and wife team, are still, mostly the wife is still a face and involved, professional CEO running it. So
Yeah.
it's rare that it works out that way. But most large companies, we've got this program, Dancing with Startups, where really help large corporations figure out how do you actually work with smaller companies, whether you buy them or not,
Mhm.
and don't kill them along the way. So it sounds like you're potentially a favorite channel there. Can we talk about the industry a little bit? What are you seeing in terms of trends? Personalization is huge, both from a technology point of view in terms of recommending what to buy, but
Yep.
also personalization of goop, as, as we call it sometimes.
Yep.
But
Yep.
no, the personalization of the products, whether it's something you put on you or something you put in you, and whether it's a supplement or your patch thing.
Yep.
Really interested in your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I think personalization is a really hot trend. I mean, we've all seen the trend around clean beauty, and there's a new trend around sustainability. But
Yeah,
personalization is
clean
right
and green, right?
right, clean and green. Yeah, but personalization is right up there, and it's something that's really hard to do at scale. At one point,
Correct.
we looked at a way to make patches on a basically a custom basis for people,
Hmm.
um, and it's really hard to make that work. Really hard to make that scale. And my thesis on it is that you're either going to have huge capex like the guys at I think it's Function of Beauty are doing like customized hair,
Right.
and it's you got to raise a ton of money and you got to build,
It's a
you
big
know,
back end. Yep.
yeah, the ability to make one-offs for people, or you do some things like other brands are being a little bit more innovative at the consumer level where they let the consumer mix and match themselves. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a DIY approach to personalization.
Right. Which usually falls apart. But there's a
No,
certain
I
there's
think
a
there's
certain chemistry. What do you call that? The personas. It's the chemist kit persona
right, right,
that
exactly. And
there's
I think
yeah,
there's
still maybe 10% of the
back and forth
population will
for
do.
a while, but yeah, there's a small cadre of consumers that will do it, and then there's a novelty factor where people will start it out, and then but does it become part of your ongoing skincare regimen? Uh, you know, very much TBD in my mind.
Yeah. Or does it come and go, and then you've got a retention issue? You can't keep the subscription going. Yeah. A lot of companies chiseling away at that, and scalability is always tends to be the issue. What about retail? You seem like you're really plugged in with global channels and retail. You have to be. I mean, that's part of your secret sauce.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing there, cross categories, but happening over the next couple of years? We've many shows have talked about the brain damage we went through in the 2020 lockdowns, and they learned a lot. But looking forward for the next couple of years, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly lived that roller coaster of 2020, and we sell through department stores and specialty beauty stores, which in mid March of last year shut their
Wasn't
doors. wholesale.
Was not fun. Yeah,
No, it was not
exactly.
fun. And, there were a lot of us who were, hanging on with fingernails, embedded in the wood, trying to, make sure that things were okay. Um, and then the business moved online, and it's sort of cliche now to say that the online trend has accelerated by 5 years. And, what was a 20% penetration in our category is now a 35% penetration in our category. So that's certainly happened and happening. And I think that's here to stay. I don't think we're going to go back from digital penetration in the industry. I think e-commerce is here. I mean, my mom is 74, and she's now buying products, skincare products online. That's
She finally understands what you've been doing all these years.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think the way products get to market are changing. Ways that they're getting to market are changing. But the fundamentals of the business are still the same. You got to have great products. You have a great brand story. You got to get it into the consumer's hands as efficiently as possible. So that's not changing. I think that there are lots of opportunities, though, for new ways to engage with consumers,
Hmm.
through video, through new social media channels, and new technologies to allow people to sort of try things on virtually, and things like that. But I do think that the world of in-person physical retail is not going away. I think that there will always be an opportunity and a need for human interaction, for trying things on or trying things out in stores, smelling, touching, feeling before you buy. Call me old fashioned, but I don't believe that that's going away.
No, it's still there. The retailers that Revive works with is, they're looking 2 years out and bringing back a lot of the technology. I mean, even though we've been pushing, use your own device as the trend for 3 years now, so that's gone off the charts with the health and wellness index that they track. The retailers that have sound backing and funding and a trajectory and an understanding are saying, how do we bring these things back in, and maybe a less touchy environment, but we still want to engage people. So you've got some unique perspectives there. How about marketplaces, though? Everyone from Kroger to, you name it, Best Buy, and a couple companies in Canada, they're all looking at what Amazon did, which seemed foreign to most people at first, and then Walmart jumped in, and really Google and eBay were mostly eBay were pretty much already doing it years ago.
Yeah.
How do you see that in terms of strategy for brands and manufacturers?
I mean, I'm a big fan of and a big believer that brands need to figure out cost-effective ways to connect with consumers.
Mm,
And whether that's through a retail channel that takes 50% of the sales price, or 40% or 60% or whatever it is, or a marketplace that might take 10, 15, 20% of the price. I think brands in general, there's a value to being in a lot of those places.
right.
And you just need to work the business model to make sure that works for you. I mean, we're on Amazon with our brands, it's what's called seller central, in a marketplace kind of environment. And what you gain in terms of lower marketplace fees versus the retailer margins,
Right.
you end up spending back in customer acquisition, because it's a marketplace, and I've got to drive people to come to my pages and buy my products. And I think that's another reason why being part of a company like Rare Beauty Brands is advantageous to small brands, because we've got people who are actively figuring that out. It's not just the entrepreneur, figuring it out for him or herself. We've got the ability to invest in all the different ways that companies are going to market, and all the
Right.
different distribution channels, and figure it out.
And there's going to be some new ones in a couple of years. When you see FedEx buying ShopRunner, there's a lot of merging, converging going on.
Yeah.
So how do you approach, you mentioned influencers, creators, whatever, everyone uses a different word on their platform, but let's just take Instagram and TikTok. How do you either approach, or how do you recommend, brands kind of work those channels?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that content is key, and so brands need to be content creation houses. You need to be developing creative video, and photo, and really all of the content, blog content, etc., to drive people to wherever they are. I think you also, though, need to have that creative side, but you also need to have a business side that says,
Hmm.
where is the ROI? right? Because we all saw the rise of Google and then the rise of Facebook, and tons of venture money flowed into buying Facebook ads for DTC startups. And what happens? The algorithm figures it out, and ad rates go up, and ROI comes down. And so then we all rush over to influencers, and the same thing happens, right? Influencer rates go up and ROI comes down. And so, good brands need to be taking advantage of those opportunities when they're there, but they also need to be sort of stepping back and thinking, okay, where's the next place going to be? Where's the
Right.
next pocket of ROI to be found? Because it's constantly changing.
Yeah. What would you tell them if we were in a closed door session on that one?
Well, it sounds like there's a hidden meaning there. I mean, I think that
No, if like you're advising one of your startups, saying, hey, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, forget that. We got this. Go work on this one.
Oh, which is the new place? I mean, I think you got to be looking at Clubhouse right now.
Yep. There you
I don't
go.
know what their business model is going to be and how brands can engage there. It's like, I think it's only like a few months old,
Right.
but TikTok has been kind of done, and I'm even seeing the ROI wane a little bit on TikTok already. It's like 8 months into it or something.
Yep.
And Clubhouse is 8 weeks in. So we'll see, what's next.
Yeah. Yep.
But again, I think it's just being, brutally honest with yourself and realizing, Jeff Bezos is the richest guy on earth for a reason. And Mark Zuckerberg is, right behind him for a reason. These algorithms are very good at extracting the maximum amount of cash from their customers.
Yeah, exactly. Beware of DTC. What kind of spread do you recommend, really all across industries, that companies would have, in terms of e-commerce marketplace channels, direct to consumer, influencer, just take all the digital stuff, call that direct to consumer, but it's not really direct. Direct used to be called your website, but yeah, just percentage of, hey, we're going through traditional retail, we're going through like third-party digital e-com, and then our own DTC. Any magic formulas there?
I don't think there's a magic recipe. I maybe counterintuitive, but I feel like it really starts from what is the brand's strategy? What is the way that the brand engages with consumers? And if that's something where you require physical touch feel, like it's apparel or some unique thing, then you're going to be way weighted more towards
In person.
store, right?
Right.
If it's a product that people understand and sort of get, you're probably weighted more towards DTC. And it also relates to the category that you're in. If there's already a million brands on Amazon selling a moisturizer, it's hard to stand out in that crowd. And so you've got to think of a better way, or maybe you go the Dermalogica route and you go after spas and salons. I think you just got to be creative and match the distribution strategy to the brand strategy. And wherever you end up on a percentage basis of DTC versus Amazon versus in-store is where you end up.
Right. Yeah, good advice. The really want to thank you for having you kind of come on and share some of your secrets. Interested in just how would you advise a lot of these companies out there, startups, indie brands, to kind of dance with either large corporates or incubators, accelerators, venture studios, which is more your model, but yours is definitely a hybrid. And quite frankly, just engaging with you. What are some of your tips there?
Yeah, I mean, my one biggest piece of advice that I give entrepreneurs outside of dealing with large companies is
Yeah.
always, and this is something that a fellow portfolio company CEO said to me one time when I was going through a really, really tough time with my business, not this business, a previous company. He said, your main job as the CEO entrepreneur is to just never, ever, 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 ever give up. And that this was at a time when I was ready to sort of hand the keys back and say, guys, I can't figure this out, I'm out. And it was so valuable to hear that, to just like the pluck and the persistence of the entrepreneur. And it's a little trite to say it, but it really, really matters. So that's the fortitude to keep going when it looks bleak, because that's the only path to success. And then in terms of engaging with larger entities, you have to have a very clear idea of what you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get involved in a conversation with a big company, and they've got competing interests and they've got their own, interests in mind, and they might just want to learn from you. They might want to, kick it around a little bit. They might be using you to just understand a category because they're looking to acquire something else. So go into it with like eyes wide open and knowing what you want to get out of it. And when they say, hey, would you tweak your product this way? No,
Hmm.
the answer is no. We're doing our thing, and unless you're going to pay me big money for it,
Right.
no, we're going to do our thing.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of tire kickers out there, but yeah, yeah, good advice. And if people are interested in maybe partnering up with you, what's the best way to approach you guys?
Well, I mean, rarebeautybrands.com. I'm Chris at rarebeautybrands.com. Would love to hear from folks that are out there that see the opportunity to scale their brand and do it as part of a conglomerate of brands.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming on. You've been listening to Chris Hobson, the CEO of Rare Beauty Brands. And this is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. I want to thank you for joining us today. We'll see you soon.